Hey, and welcome back to the channel, Unqualified Critics. Glad to have you. Today for this video, we're going to talk about something a little different, but related to what we normally talk about. And I noticed something interesting, I think, on the Amazon Top 100 Bestsellers list. I check this list from time to time to see what kind of products might be discounted to bring to you guys with links, or just generally trends with gaming, what's selling well, what's moving up, moving down. What's happening right now, the big story is Last of Us 2, a big PS4 game. Now, I know not everyone who watches my channel does modern gaming, but you've probably heard of Last of Us 2. It's really one of the biggest PlayStation exclusives there is. It's taken a bit of a tumble lately, and it's been passed in a pretty big way by the Sega Genesis Mini. I view this as a huge symbol for a trend that's a couple years in the making, and that is many of us are looking backward at older video games and not as excited about the newer stuff. I think there are some unfortunate reasons why, but in this video we're going to explore that and why I think that's happening and why I think retro gaming is only going to get bigger for the foreseeable future. Now, Last of Us 2 sales is a big story right now. Whether you hate or love the game, you have to admit the game's writers made some controversial choices with the game and its characters, and that's really putting it mildly. Now, I've not played the game, not a big fan of the franchise. I probably never will play the game. So this video isn't really about Last of Us 2, other than to me, it's just that big symbol of the failure of modern gaming that I believe is in a big part responsible for the rise in retro gaming that we all enjoy, with products like Arcade1Up, the Legends Ultimate, and of course all those mini consoles. The whole thing is bittersweet because on one hand I never imagined having so many of my favorite classic games, both consoles and arcades, or let alone arcades, released and made into such great products we could enjoy today. A few years ago I was thinking, do I really need to get into collecting retro games so I could play them? And then the mini consoles hit. And I know they aren't good enough for everybody. Same thing, by the way, with Arcade1Up. That's not good enough for everybody. Some people want the true original. Nothing wrong with that. But for me, these re-releases really did scratch the itch. And the mini consoles, aside from PlayStation Classic, which was trash, the other ones are really good. And who could have predicted that the house, our basements, would be the final frontier of arcades? Products like Arcade1Up and the AtGames Legends Ultimate are perfect for those of us aging folks, older millennials, Gen Xers, boomers, you name it. We made some of our best memories in front of a console or at the arcade with friends in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and this is a huge resurgence for that, so more power to us. But on the other hand, as recently as the early 2000s, I don't think folks we're looking backward all that much. I know I wasn't, because the promise of the future seemed so exciting in gaming. As in-game graphics, physics, and AI improved, we all sort of assumed the storytelling and everything else would just get richer as it goes. Hell, in the 80s, as an example, in-game music was limited to 5 tones at a time on the NES, but it was awesome. So how could the future be anything less than more awesome, with more rich soundtracks and better developed characters? But then something changed. Today's characters aren't all that well developed in many cases. They're often, in my opinion, one-dimensional avatars for the writer's agenda in the game. And I think that's why today so many of us spend more time looking backward at games we used to love and still love than toward the future and what's coming next. This suggests the medium of gaming has peaked, at least for now, and that could change in the future. And while there are current games many of us love, of course, gaming's never been bigger. For me, my current guilty pleasures are the Friday the 13th game, not the old NES one, but the online multiplayer game, and Sea of Thieves. Those are both as modern as they get, and I really do enjoy those games. But the fact remains that some of the hottest games out right now have more in common with the 90s than today. But the fact remains that some of the hottest games of the last couple years, especially when you look at how much was spent to develop the game and the sales, so I'm not talking AAA games here, I'm talking games like Streets of Rage 4 and Sonic Mania. I mean, those are straight out of the 90s. Or look at re-releases like the fantastic NBA Jam Cabinet from Arcade1Up. How many of us are excited to play digital recreations of old school physical pinball tables right now? I mean, that's arguably the biggest story of home arcades of 2020, and those products aren't even out yet, really, other than the toy shop. doesn't get any more low tech and retrograde than pinball. So that brings me back to Last of Us 2. As of this recording, it is ranked 17 on Amazon sales charts. The Sega Genesis Mini is ranked number 6. Now, this isn't a perfect comparison. This ignores digital sales of Last of Us 2, and the Sega is on sale right now for $40, which is an awesome deal. If you don't have one and you're thinking, I don't know, is it worth it? Yeah, it's worth it. I'm not really that big of a Sega fan, but absolutely, I paid $80 for mine. I'm very happy. But on the other hand, this Sega Genesis Mini's been out for going on a year. But all that's beside the point, because I think there's a much bigger narrative here at play. The repackaged re-release of a console from 1988 is beating out in sales the crown jewel of Sony's first-party offerings for one of the biggest game platforms of all time. A sequel 7 years in the making, released to a platform with over 100 million consoles sold. The Last of Us 2 is estimated to have cost $100 million. No one knows the exact figure, but that's an estimate. While the Sega Mini features in-game menu music written by one guy, inspired by work he did in 1991. It's really incredible. Now, here's the difference. The Sega Mini was designed as a love letter to fans, with painstaking attention of detail, evoking those nostalgia feels to transport you back to a simpler time. It's clearly an effort to give us what we want. Whether it was perfect or not, it's not quite perfect, but they definitely tried to give us what we want, and they did largely succeed. At the same time, Last of Us 2 is a game designed to subvert our expectations. And the game director is on record saying their team that made the game does not use the word fun to describe the game. What the hell happened that one of the biggest games of 2020 is not supposed to be fun? No wonder we play things like the Sega Mini and the arcade one-up NBA Jam, or are looking forward to virtual pinball. The energy behind games like Last of Us 2, indulgent products by directors and game writers who almost seem to resent their own fans, that's not going away anytime soon. And that, I believe, is a big part of why we all look backward now and why retro gaming is a $500 million a year juggernaut, and it's only going to get bigger. So if that's what you're here for, is retro gaming, then buckle up, because I think some of the best products for the home arcade and beyond are around the corner. But if you're into gaming in general, it's kind of a bittersweet time, because some of the newest games aren't really designed to give you a good time. Let me know what you guys think. Do you care at all about modern gaming, or is it really all about the golden age and later retro games? Is that the key? I find myself spending more and more time playing my TurboGrafx Mini, my arcade one-ups, my Legend Ultimate. So I went from someone who spent all their time on modern games to, or 90% of it, to increasingly all in on retro gaming. But I'm curious if you guys are having the same experience. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you enjoy the video, hit like. That helps with YouTube's infamous algorithm. And if you enjoy the channel and want to hear more about retro gaming, all things home arcade, hit the subscribe button and we'll keep you posted. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll talk to you guys soon.
Dripping lights paint the sky.